starting to get to the point where my hands and my brain aren't connected. And we're getting it all set up on the alignment rack, which fits frickin' fantastic. Welcome back to the Lost Cause Ranch. We have an empty trailer, and it's just about time to get on the road to head to Maine for the Winter Romp. We planned on taking Ted's 1966 Land Rover Series. Justin from Lucky 8 invited us out for a little competition.
Everybody thought I couldn't win 2 years in a row.
Something you can dethrone me. Prove it.
How many minutes until February 10th?
It's 12,218 minutes until then.
Now that sounds a lot better. This one might work. Gonna need a couple upgrades though. We'll say that is challenge accepted, Corbin. Today, you guys are gonna see if we can get that thing in proper order and ready to win. Let's see if it's gonna end up on that trailer. So if you caught the Alabama video, you may have noticed something missing back here. When we were down in Alabama and it was 80 degrees, not a problem, besides the dust. But with this being called the Winter Romp and it being in damn near Canada, I'm thinking that and that may need to be addressed. And Ted's over here being all fancy. He's got the channel all wrapped in felt. Wouldn't want any rattles. Now, I've said this time and time again, the best way to own Land Rovers is to own a ton of them, because when you're in a little bit of a time crunch like this one, you have spare parts. And luckily, Ted also has a couple more series trucks laying, and we can steal some bits and bobs. For the year. Man, these actually come out. And the good news is, while we're doing this over here, buying some more shit I probably don't need. But how cool are those? This right here looks like a good way for me to end up getting cut. Got one of them clean without losing a finger. There too. So what if I'd probably get a whole lot more accomplished if I didn't sit here and watch auctions in two different ways, because I wouldn't be wasting time listening to this thing ding while I'm bidding on stuff. And I also wouldn't be wasting time collecting that stuff and moving it around in my all too small shop. Look at how frickin' clean that glass is. Hardly tell it's even in there. What part of Don't Touch Can't Joe listen to? We'll put the real trick to securing these into place. We're gonna be awful fancy up in here. Might even be able to see. The ones on here now are, as they say, a little bit chooched. Oh, it just detents down. Well, that's nifty. You can tell how many of those I've done. Well, this one's got a whole lot more going on. It actually does not require any tools. I spoke too soon. Well, that other side went so much better. I don't know what I did different, but it worked. That's gonna be so nice. Oh. Would you look at that? You're gonna have so much cleaning action. You just have to run the portable switch. Try this side. This one's a little more It requires a passenger for remote operation. This one's got a lot more swing when you do it manually. Way more visibility. Might even have to take up smoking on this trip. If it's on the YouTube, it's correct. Well, you want to match the other side or no? I was just guessing. If it makes it out, just do that. I think we just get a sawzall and cut the hole bigger.
Just like life, always coming up short.
Frickin' nailed it. So we obviously nailed the length on that guy. Don't have to worry about dying of carbon monoxide poisoning now. What I've determined is the LS3 Defender's not getting Alpine windows.
I think it's getting the canvas top.
Oh, lost your rubber. I got the hard job. That's gonna be so nice. And look at what just showed up. Also got this sitting here. That guy is gonna make sure we get where we need to go. And this is what looks to be like 800 frickin' pounds of more work. Caution, heavy. But no, there is like 220 pounds of much needed stuff for the series. And somehow the guys from Lucky 8 were able to get it from New York to Iowa in just 2 days, which is really helpful because we're leaving for Maine in just a couple days, or maybe a couple thousand minutes. Up at Ted's, we have the nice box opener. Down at the ranch, we just got the Harbor Freight version. He's way more than me.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Shock rear, shock rear, shock rear. Looks like they already sent out my trophy. At least they know it's headed to Iowa. That is right. The old series is getting a suspension refresh because, as you know, with age, some stuff starts to get a little saggy. And then other things, a little loose, and sometimes a little curved to the left. But I think right here is the medication to solve that disease. And before we start tackling the little suspension overhaul, we're gonna get some measurements to see just how tired the old suspension is and how much more snow clearance the new one's gonna give us. If we go center of hub, 18 and 5/8 up front, that's in inches for the Americans, 473 millimeters across the pond. Back here we are at an even 19, or in the Landy's homeland, 482.6 millimeters. And on the driver's side, up front, we are at 19 and a quarter and 19 and 3/8 in the back. Notice how I consistently write my measurements. We got fractional and decimal mixed together because that's how my mind works. And while we're at it, I need to check how well it flexes. Frickin' stuffed back here. So we noticed down in Alabama, steering was just a tiny bit on the iffy side. And just a note to the other competitors in the Winter Romp Challenge, this right here is exactly why you go down to Arizona to pick your 60s Land Rover up, because all the bolts come loose, and then, like a smart person, you drive it out to Maine and go bash it around in the snow. Over at the ranch, we kind of slum it. Up here at Ted's, when one doesn't fit, you grab the smaller one. Oh, does a small one fit over there?
Small one's not gonna fit.
Ted has to just slum it with a wrench over on this side. You just look at how hard that thing is to get off. Wonder how Justin's is going. These guys have what we like to call active steering. Tiny bit on the loose side, and judging by the looks of what is inside, I have no idea why. But on top of having some nice tight joints, look at the frickin' girth we are adding. Only downfall, I'm not quite sure the old 2 1/4 underneath the hood is gonna like that extra weight. And we're getting it all set up on the alignment rack. Pretty close to a Hunter system. That right there is a certified 16-foot Milwaukee auto lock. Guaranteed good tire wear or your money back. See, with so little time left, it's 2 hands on deck. If nothing else, they sure look the part up front there. I mean, don't look at that part. Whatever's going on there definitely doesn't look the part. But these do.
Jesus fuck. Cut.
Look at that Arizona bolt. How many miles these shocks have on them, Ted?
120.
120. Just a little Alabama sand is all. That was well worth the investment.
Part of our race program.
That said, it's part of our race program. Every Rover run, new set of shocks. Nothing wrong with the hat. That might be part of the reason for the new setup. The bushings are just a little tired all the way around. Okay, so maybe all the bolts didn't quite come out as easy. So we are doing a little bit of divide and conquer with the limited time frame that we have to get this guy ready to get on the road to Maine, to get there in time. I was working on the Freelander, as you can imagine, because it's broken. But Ted was able to get the bushings out of the front frame rail. Those are for the shackles. Right here is what he originally devised to do that. Essentially, you have your bushing in the frame rail, you have your socket that fits against that bushing, and then we have some all thread all, whatever order that goes in, and you go slip that through, use your socket, thread that on, and you just tighten that down and suck that bushing right out of the frame rail. But as you can see, it worked out swimmingly with a bent rod, chooched up threads. So he just resorted to the hack it out method. Essentially there, you blow the rubber out, get that center sleeve out, then slice the outer sleeve and just start peeling away at it. And both sides are nice and clean, ready to install the new bushings. The good news is that tool is not going to waste. It'll work on the install. And as you can see on video, this is cold to the touch. The bushing hung out in the freezer overnight. You know, because everything shrinks when it's cold. And there you have it, fresh bush in the chassis. That guy's definitely not gonna get stuck in there, especially with our race program where that suspension gets changed out every run. Oh, and Ted went ahead and painted the springs. I mean, as good as primer looks, black's a tad better. Oh, that went well. Who hired this guy? Oh yeah, that guy's gonna need some squeezing. And there is the driver's side, looking pretty proper.
The orange shocks will go with the orange winch.
Ooh, that they will. And this right here might give you a little bit of a clue as to what we're adding to the old series to make sure that we beat Corbin at the Winter Romp this year. I mean, I can't imagine why the thing doesn't just work. That looks
A little crispy.
to be part of the problem. I'm guessing that's not supposed to be like that. It does spin. I mean, how cool is that piece? The Rover Motor Company of North America. Little Bellevue winch. We're gonna dive into this guy a little bit further.
You don't even see like cable that well built.
They just don't make it like they used to. Back in my day.
Back in my day, I'll take it apart, but shit's like all fine.
I mean, this is some nice freaking cable. If I've ever seen cable. I mean, look at that. We're getting to cable that's probably never seen the light of day since like 1969. Apparently now we're just gonna cut that cable that Ted thought was so nice. How could you do that? That's original freaking cable.
Oh, way lighter now.
All right, so what we got here is an original Bellevue winch. This is off Ted's 1967 109 Nada. And we're gonna see if we can get this guy in a functional manner to set on the front of this guy in anticipation of getting stuck in some deep snow, if there's gonna be snow. Ideally, we'd like to get this one going because what's better than having something that is nice and period correct? We have a couple modern Warren winches we can throw on there as backups, but this is just so much cooler and heavier. I mean, we could probably get it working if the instructions weren't worn away. We know what to do then. Oh, and just pull it.
Kind of leave that fucking thing there.
Looks like it's about off. There. That's
Got a thing.
so there's that. There's much more on this side. Really nice when equal amounts of water and oil come out of your gearbox. That is an obscene amount of water to be coming out of that. We're gonna fill the bucket up. And speaking of auction finds, look at this nice little teardown table. Everything flows nicely to that little hole there, drains it right into the bucket. We have found that gear lube flows just as well as blood. Yeah, it used to hold dead bodies. Came from a morgue. So even though the Nada is a little too far away from being road ready in about a week span, well, I don't think even 12,000 minutes is enough for this guy. It can still help with the white 66. And how it's going to help is the front bumper. See, being this is the Winter Romp, we're probably going to see a little bit of snow. And if we want to be the Winter Romp champions, we can't afford to be stuck in that snow. So to aid in our less stuckage plan, we have this special little guy off Ted's 109 Nada. All right, so what we got here is an original Bellevue winch. Yes, that's right. That is an original Bellevue 6000 winch. And that guy needs to end up on the front of the white one. And we have a spare repop front bumper that belongs on the front of my Nada. And we could modify this guy, brace it up, and make a winch mount right in the center so we can land that winch on the front of the white one. But if you look at this guy, it appears to be just some 11 gauge steel formed up. Pretty thin. Not exactly something you want to put a lot of yank action on. And that is where this chunk of massive 3-inch by 4-inch square tube comes into play. Right there is the base to our new custom front winch bumper. This guy is nearly double the thickness of the original bumper, along with being fully boxed. So all we need to do is somehow get it mounted to the front. And thankfully I have a spare series laying around so we can make that happen. Our handy dandy notepad and my pencil. And once again, we're going to make some very descriptive sketches. That should work. Anymore, it seems that we just can't do a project without busting out the CNC plasma. Not that I'm complaining. And there is what we came up with off those little sketches. We'll see if we can make something that is nice and stout. These will be the top and bottom plates that mount to the frame rail itself, which are similar to these guys on the factory style bumper. But in addition to those, being we are mounting a winch that is capable of pulling multiple tons, we have these side plates that will also tie in the bumper to the spring mount across there and give us a nice and strong mounting setup. Now we just need to do some measuring, some tacking, some fitting, then some welding. That easy. So we're going to take a couple measurements and make sure that galvanized bumper we have matches up to the frame, just so we know that we can take measurements off the galvanized bumper to build the new one. I'd hate to copy this guy and have this guy be wrong. So those guys will mount just like that. If a guy had a magnet sitting somewhere, that'd be convenient. Hold on. All right, so no magnet handy. Instead, we have one of the F-clamps holding one of the plates top. And what we will do is just hold that flush against that plate, and that will keep us flush against the top of the tube. And we'll make sure that guy is sitting square, which it is. Then we can set this guy into place here, make sure our holes line up, and it appears they do. So that guy just needs to go something like that. Square him up. And now we can see if it still fits. It's getting heavier now. And there we go. Now I can't fit out of there, but we're starting to look like something. Well, that's less than ideal. We're doing the divide and conquer again. I was working on the bumper, Ted's working on the winch, and that may have had a little more water sitting in it than you want. And as it turns out, the amount you want is 0. So we got all our mounting bits tacked into place. On the lower, we have the cutouts because we need to slide inside the front spring mount. But even though we are running short on time, we are still gonna make sure this thing looks good. We can't just be bolting crap onto the Land Rover. So this open, squared off edge just isn't gonna fly. To combat that, we have this as our solution. One of those there, and another up here. Now we're gonna throw a bevel on all these guys where they're gonna get welded on a butt joint, and that is so when we fill this guy with the weld and flush it off smooth with the grinder, we still have good penetration with a full strength weld, and we aren't gonna just grind the weld itself off. Now that leaves us with this area to fill, which when you're doing 1/4-inch plate isn't necessarily easy to do. When you have the tools that I have, you need a pretty healthy slip roll to form that guy. So in lieu of that, I found a chunk of pipe, and this is gonna be our cheater way of getting a radiused edge. And there we have hard and nice radiused edge with a good corner we can fill and smooth out to match the tube radius. Man, that's gonna look good. All that's left to do at this point is make sure the bumper fits on the series that it's actually supposed to go on. think we're there. We can now mark out where this guy's gonna sit and where we want to mount the fair lead. Also, I want to know if you guys can catch the mistake I made on the bumper. Caught it after I tacked it all together. Let me know down below if you guys spot it as well. And we're getting down to the nitty gritty, but Ted just whipped up a mount for our little secret weapon. This guy's going in the cargo area of the series and is going to be a key factor to keeping us on the top of our mental game. All right, so maybe a few more of the bolts didn't quite want to come out, but we did find our main problem with our active suspension that we were having down in Alabama. That guy, not supposed to do that, but that is currently remedied. The rear parabolics are in place. Brand new shocks once again. The ones that were previously on this were obviously wore out, 120 miles. And they just weren't the right color. Also want to say thanks to Justin for the heads up on just sending limit straps out with the kit. And some extra doodads that we might need to do the job. Being we're in a little bit of a time crunch, couldn't afford more shipping time between New York and Iowa. Right now we're just sitting in wait for a little bit of a U-bolt situation. Then we can get this buttoned up in the morning, which is the last full day we have before we need to start driving 24 freaking hours in what appears to be a snowstorm that will probably follow the entire trip. So I just want to say to the other guys competing, we're getting more Winter Romp for our money than you are. And just for you, Dr. Rick, we'll get our doors locked into place. That's a little stuck, a little unfortunate because with that there, that doesn't exactly fit. All that we're really accomplishing is losing more of that Alabama sand. Now we got some room. So we're just figuring out where we want this thing to land.
Bring it back up a little bit.
Unless you want to split it, you can almost do that. Yeah, so you'll just have a little tab. So right there is roughly what we're thinking. Fair lead centered out in the bumper, spool centered out in the bumper, and then we're going to keep it tucked low, but not hanging below the bumper. And ultimately make it look a little bit nicer than the bumper that it was previously mounted on. And since we have all the time in the world, Ted's making sure that we're not going to have any rattles. From this at least. Can't guarantee anything else. Pretty slick little mount. Got some isolators, the felt underneath. The finest of creature comforts for us here at the ranch. A couple minor hints as to what's going on. That is right, we are going to be romping in comfort. Our factory climate control isn't quite functioning the way it was intended, so we upgraded with our very own diesel heater. Just gotta work on routing the exhaust somewhere. We're gonna stay nice and warm, keeping us nice and sharp. No silly mistakes from being too cold. And the little power pack sits nicely right next to it so we can power it without taxing the Land Rover charging system. She's chooching away. She's burning clean now. We went ahead and diesel swapped it. And you guys don't know what you guys are missing out on. See, we got dual zone climate control. I don't know if you guys are big Mercedes guys, but a lot of the fancy ones come with the air curtain in the seat that heats around your neck. We have that now. Getting her nice and smoothed out. And just so you guys don't think this is some manufactured theatrics just for YouTube, it is 6:09 p.m. on Tuesday, February 11th. That is right, we are still making our bumper, and it is about halfway done, still needs to be painted, and Ted and I are on the road tomorrow. Like I always say, I'm my own worst enemy, so we need to punch a couple holes. Still wondering if you figured out what my mistake is yet. So we now have room for the winch rope to go through, which is always nice. That hole right there is gonna get covered up by our fair lead. We got a little bit of cleaning up left to do, but as you saw, we drilled 4 corners so we can have a nice radiused edge. But man, I have a frickin' disaster going on here, but that seems like a future drill problem. And there it is, as finished as it's gonna get. No, it's actually pretty much all set up. Just wanted to run over and test fit it. And if you ask me, looks pretty nice. And now with this beefy front bumper, we'll be able to bash off whatever we want. Now to just get a winch to go on it. Still looking in sad shape. And the day isn't getting any younger. Still February 11th, 9:47 p.m. now. So we're getting down to the wire here, looking around, and just remembered that this glass is not with us. Even though we replaced the Alpine window and the rear glass on this side, we still got one left. Even with the diesel heater, it'd be a bit chilly without that guy. But like I always say, best way to own a Land Rover is to own multiples. That way you're bound to have a few that aren't running that you can drop some parts off of. So while I'm messing with the window, Ted's over here hammering some stuff off the winch. By the looks of things, I got the better job to do. Just like that. Nice. Here's over here, polishing everything up. Inside of the case is looking a tad bit better than before. Pretty... stay. Waiting for it to fall. I'd be running home and grabbing a glass out of the green one if it has it. I'm starting to get to the point where my hands and my brain aren't connected. We're slumming it around here. We have to do them by hand. Sorry. No Milwaukee riveter yet. My project's done. How's yours going back there? He just asked how the bumper's doing. Paint's a tad thick on the bumper. It's not gonna rust at least. She's getting a full rebuild. Got all new bushes as well. Here's something I can't say I've ever been a part of doing before, and that is gluing on some new, I guess, brake material to the band. 8 to 12 minutes of working time. So
My brain doesn't work that fast.
we'll give Ted a minute to get that guy cut to shape before we start mixing the epoxy. This thing doesn't feel like 2 tons to me, but as you guys all know, I'm a pretty strong guy. Now you probably want to keep it a half round. In my brake lining, expert opinion. Can I start the mixing?
I mean, it's not like cheap shit, but it's also not. It's $20.
20 bucks is 20 bucks.
This is what we used to fill the on blocks back in the day.
I like it. Don't try this at home. We are professionals. But no, seriously, don't try this at home. Results not guaranteed. But Ted's got it zip tied into a somewhat round shape, because in theory it's probably better to glue it in the form that it's going to be sitting. If we had it laid flat, glued it, there's a chance rolling it back over that we stretch it in a way it doesn't like. And it is now after midnight on what was Tuesday night, now Wednesday morning. We're gonna call that for tonight. We're gonna finish this up tomorrow, which is also the day we leave on our 24-hour journey. Seems wise. So just some last minute winch parts getting made. You just saw us turn this down on the lathe, clean up the inside, and then we just cut this guy out, which fits frickin' fantastic right in there. We got one more piece to add, and that piece gets that in the center hole, and then this guy goes on there into our new brake hub. And there we have a proper winch bumper. We just did a quick rattle can galvanized jobber on it. After we get back from Maine, we'll send it off to get a proper galvanized job. Along with, I may make another one for my series. I kind of like that guy. We are getting close to winch time. New motor is on there. It is 3:26 on February 12th. We are leaving in 3.5 hours. Don't scratch it. It don't even fit. And there's that brake hub all finished out. No guarantee on the amount of run out. Some nice professional cables getting made up. Only the best for this little guy. We are running a few hours late, which would be like 180 minutes for those of you keeping track. But either way, we're gonna get on the road. I'll recap exactly everything we did to get this guy ready for the Winter Romp Challenge. But we're behind, so we need to get rolling now and hopefully see you guys in Maine. So the trip out was interesting to say the least. Our first hour and a half took just 4 hours. But let's recap everything that we did to get this 1966 Series IIA ready for the competition. Up front here, and far and away my favorite part of the project, is this custom heavy-duty winch bumper. That guy is solidly mounted and holds Ted's freaking awesome original Rover Group Bellevue 6000 winch. For safety's sake, we lined that with a crawler off-road synthetic cable. And in the next video, you guys will see we did get a chance to use it. Our buddies at Complete Off-Road here in town got us the correct color to match those shocks in short notice, so that was a big help. Outside of that, we got our windows all in place. Much nicer comfort-wise. And in addition to that comfort, we had the diesel heater hooked up in case it got too cold out there looking for the Yeti. So it's all mounted in a reversible fashion. And attached to that aluminum bracket is the coolest storage container for all the bits and bobs and tools. That is an original Miller High Life cooler with a top seat that matches the factory red interior. Ted also went ahead and took apart the wiper motor, got that wiping, added a couple cup holders, and our power management center. Definitely gonna romp in style. And then being we're out in the middle of the woods, we added a 5th wheel and tire to the hood. That's quite possibly the coolest feature on a series. Even though for short guys like myself, the trail visibility is less than ideal. But style points, can't beat it. To fit that big wide wheel, we had to make up a adapter plate. The factory clamp didn't quite reach. Then the biggest project was hanging a set of fresh parabolic springs and shocks underneath, along with Terra Firma's heavy-duty tie rod setup. We needed to tighten everything up. This thing was a little sketchy at speed down in Alabama, so hopefully that is the ticket to the win. We ran out of time to install it here in Iowa, but we are also bringing an electric fuel pump down. We kind of ran into some vapor lock issues down in Alabama. So, you know, we're just doing some vapor lock things. Fuel got a tad bit hot. Not quite feeding. Not a terrible place to hang out though. And we are back in business. Although I'm guessing the 60-degree temperature swing is going to alleviate that, but it's coming along just in case. I can't thank the guys at Lucky 8 enough for putting this little challenge together, getting our Iowa boys' butts out to Maine. Probably wouldn't have happened otherwise. And on top of getting the challenge together, they came in clutch and always come in clutch with the parts we need for our Land Rovers. And when you have 14 of them, they're your best friends. And with that being said, I appreciate you guys watching, appreciate you subscribing, and we will catch you on the next one in Maine. It's looking to be a frickin' blast.